Are you ready for what's coming? Because the next cycle might not be just another economic crisis, it could be the most profound transformation of your financial life. What you'll see in this video is not a prediction. It's a pattern. These are forces that have always preceded historical collapses, and they're all active right now. Record-level debt, increasingly divided societies, a new superpower rising to challenge global leadership. But amid all of this, there's something most people ignore. While many go bankrupt, some thrive. Today, you'll discover how to identify the signs of a collapse and how to position yourself to grow while the rest fall. Because in chaos, those who understand the cycles and act with intelligence don't just survive, they win. The story that repeats itself. Most people believe we're living through unprecedented times, but in truth, what seems new is, at its core, an old script with different actors. Throughout the centuries, the global economy has moved through similar cycles, periods of rapid growth, excessive optimism, credit expansion, followed by collapses, inflation, unemployment, and political crises. And while the details may change, the patterns are always the same. Ray Dalio, one of the world's greatest investors, understood this early on. In 1971, as a young man, he witnessed one of the most symbolic events in modern economic history. U.S. President Richard Nixon announced the end of the dollar's convertibility to gold. The gold standard, which for decades had provided stability to the financial system, was dismantled on national television. Dalio expected a broad stock market crash. After all, the foundation of the global monetary system had just been removed. But what happened? The market went up. It made no sense, until he realized the market didn't react logically, but instead followed psychological cycles and political decisions. From that moment on, he dedicated himself to studying historical patterns and discovered that major economic shifts follow a predictable logic. That's how it happened in 1929 with the New York Stock Exchange crash. That's how it happened in 2008 with the bursting of the housing bubble. And those same elements are present today. A system bloated with debt, a widening wealth gap between the elite and the pressured middle class, and the emergence of powers challenging the global status quo. The difference? Now, these forces are all occurring at the same time, with unprecedented intensity and global reach. And while most people pretend this is just another rough patch, the data shows we are about to enter a new cycle. Only this time, there may be no room for the naive or unprepared. Understanding that history repeats itself is the starting point. Because if you can see the pattern, you can get ahead of it. And those who get ahead protect their assets, seize hidden opportunities, and avoid the mistakes that send millions into bankruptcy. That's why, before thinking about what to invest in or where to put your money, you need to understand, where are we in the cycle? And more importantly, what's coming next? That's the question we'll begin to answer in the next chapter, by uncovering the three forces that always precede the greatest collapses in history. The three forces of collapse. History shows that major changes don't happen by accident. They're driven by deep forces that move slowly, until they become unstoppable. And today, those forces are more active than ever. The first is excessive debt combined with money printing. For decades, governments and central banks have turned to borrowing as a way to solve crises. In 2008, after the financial meltdown, trillions were injected into the economy. The same happened during the pandemic. And in the short term, it seems to work. centuries of economic history. And in every major collapse, from the fall of empires to the breakdown of financial systems, these forces were present. Never in exactly the same way, but always combined at the point of rupture. And guess what? Today, all of them are manifesting at the same time. The most alarming part? Most people are still looking in the rearview mirror, trying to apply old formulas to an entirely new landscape. But those who understand what's forming start moving differently. And that's exactly what we'll see next. How to recognize that the storm has already begun, and why the next phase isn't just instability, it's a collapse foretold. The perfect storm is forming. When just one of these forces is present, debt, polarization, or geopolitical change, it's already a cause for concern. But when all three move together, at a fast pace and on a global scale, we're facing something much greater. A perfect storm. The first cloud on the horizon is the debt bubble. Today, global debt levels have reached unprecedented highs. Countries, companies, and households are financially exposed like never before. And while debt, when used responsibly, can stimulate growth, when it becomes an addiction, it creates an illusion of prosperity. It's like using a credit card to maintain an unsustainable lifestyle. At first, everything seems fine, but eventually, the bill comes due, with interest that can't be paid. Governments are printing money to pay off old debts. Central banks are trying to balance inflation and growth but are losing control. And eventually, the market stops believing. When that happens, investors flee. Interest rates skyrocket, credit freezes, and collapse becomes inevitable. This isn't theoretical. We saw it in 2008 with the housing bubble. Millions lost their homes, jobs, and savings. And today, the same mistakes are being repeated, only more intensely. Meanwhile, social conflict is intensifying. Inequality is no longer just a number in reports. It's a visible reality. People struggling to survive while a few accumulate fortunes at record speed. Trust in institutions is declining. Politics has become an ideological war. And in this environment, economic growth simply halts. Investors delay plans. Consumers cut spending. Companies freeze hiring. Fear spreads, and the engine of the economy begins to stall. Behind all this, a new player is positioning itself to take the lead. China. With a strong economy, impressive technological advances, and growing influence in global trade, China is not just competing. It's rewriting the rules of the game. Its rivalry with the United States has already surpassed economics, extending into technology, military power, and international diplomacy. These three elements, uncontrolled debt, deep social division, and global power realignment, create an unprecedented scenario. This isn't just another ordinary crisis. It's the overlap of multiple crises, forming a cycle of instability with destructive potential. And the most concerning part? This cycle has already begun. But like every crisis in human history, it also carries a hidden side, opportunities that only the attentive can see. And in the next chapter, we'll understand why recognizing this historical pattern may be your greatest advantage, and how lessons from the past can protect you in the present. What history teaches us about crises. Most people react to crises as if they were accidents, unpredictable events that just happen. But history shows that major downturns follow clear patterns. And more importantly, these patterns always send signals before the collapse. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the United States faced a devastating crisis after years of excessive borrowing and rampant speculation. Unemployment soared. The economy melted down. Panic spread across the population. And the government, in an attempt to contain the collapse, had to intervene in extreme ways. Decades later, in 2008, the world saw déjà vu. This time, the bubble came from the housing market. Banks handed out easy credit to anyone, believing home prices would rise forever. The result? A global crisis that affected millions, just like in 1930. In both cases, the signs were there: artificial growth, wealth concentration, overheated markets, and blind faith in the system. Now, look around. Those same elements are present, but on an even larger scale. The difference? This time, it's not just one country or one sector at risk. It's the entire world. After studying hundreds of years of economic history, Dalio came to a simple but powerful conclusion. When debt, social conflict, and power struggles converge at the same point, a radical transformation is near. It's not about predicting exact dates. It's about recognizing the pattern. And here's the good news. The greatest moments of crisis are also the greatest leverage points for those who know what they're doing. Because while most panic, a few see the cycle as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Understanding history is what separates those who react in fear from those who act with strategy. And in the next chapter, we'll talk exactly about that. What actions you can take now to protect and thrive in the midst of this storm. How to protect yourself from the next crisis. Understanding that a crisis is forming is only the first step. What truly matters is what you do with that information. Because while most people stay frozen, waiting for external solutions, the ones who thrive are those who act before the storm hits. And here's the most important truth. You don't need to predict the future to protect yourself from it. You just need to be prepared. The first crucial move is to diversify intelligently. Many people still put all their money into a single type of asset, like real estate, stocks, or even cryptocurrency. And when that market crashes, their entire wealth crashes with it. Diversification is your shield. It doesn't prevent shocks, but it reduces damage and increases your chances of a quick recovery. This means spreading your investments across real assets, like real estate and farmland, which retain value during instability, stocks from solid companies with low debt and resilient business models, precious metals, like gold and silver, which traditionally Find value where most only see collapse. Building sustainable income. In times of crisis, one truth stands out with brutal clarity. Those who rely on a single source of income are vulnerable. A salary cut, an unexpected layoff, or a hard-hit industry, and your entire financial structure can collapse. That's why one of the most powerful forms of protection is to build multiple income streams. This doesn't mean working two exhausting jobs. It means creating parallel channels that generate income even when you're not actively involved. The famous passive income streams. Here are some practical examples. Dividend-paying investments, such as profitable company stocks and real estate funds, automated businesses, like vending machines, e-commerce stores, or standardized franchises, rentals, whether of physical properties or digital assets, online services, such as consulting, coaching, or info products based on your expertise. The ideal setup combines active and passive income. You work on one front, while others continue to generate money automatically. This creates a safety cushion that allows for more peace of mind and more boldness, even in unstable times. But for this to work, it takes planning, focus, and, above all, the right mindset. Most people see money only as a result of labor. They trade time for a paycheck and think that's the only way to build wealth. But those who thrive understand that money can be planted, like a seed that over time yields consistent fruit. And this brings us to a second fundamental point: protecting yourself from inflation. There's no point in building income if the real value of money is evaporating. In an inflationary scenario, keeping cash under the mattress or idle in a savings account guarantees loss. That's why you should invest in assets that grow alongside inflation. Real estate, essential company stocks, commodities, gold, and well-founded cryptocurrencies. Keep only what's necessary in cash for emergency. The rest must be working for you. Finally, adopt a simple principle. Your financial freedom must come from the structure you build, not from luck, not from your salary, and not from government stability. Sustainable income is built with smart choices, consistent habits, and a long-term vision. And with that vision in mind, we now move to the next point: how to use chaos, not just protect yourself from it, to find real opportunities for growth. Seeing opportunity in chaos. Crises bring many down, but elevate a few. The difference between the two isn't luck, it's vision. While most are paralyzed by fear, strategists see collapse as the perfect moment to grow. It may sound counterintuitive, but it's exactly what happened in every major crisis in history. During the pandemic, companies involved in remote work, online education, and digital health skyrocketed in value. Not because the moment was favorable, but because they met new demands that emerged in the midst of chaos. That's the secret. Every crisis changes people's behavior, and those changes create urgent needs, which only a few are quick enough to see. Want practical examples? In times of crisis, people prioritize safety, convenience, and saving money. Solutions that deliver these values rise in relevance. Businesses seek efficiency. Platforms that reduce costs or optimize processes gain ground quickly. New technologies emerge as decentralized alternatives, like cryptocurrencies and blockchain, after the 2008 crisis. Moreover, asset devaluation during a crisis can be the most fertile ground for planting capital. While everyone is panic selling, those with liquidity and clarity buy assets at prices that won't be seen again for a long time. But be careful. Opportunity is not the same as haste. You need to analyze calmly, filter out the noise from real trends, and act based on fundamentals, not emotions. A powerful question to ask in any uncertain scenario is, what new problem will people face in the coming months? And how can I solve it in a useful and profitable way? This question can lead you to business ideas, investments in promising sectors, or even strategic partnerships. But it only works if your radar is on. And the radar only works if you're prepared, with liquidity, knowledge, and courage. That's why preparing before the collapse is the real advantage. Because when the tide goes out, only those who already knew how to swim stay afloat. And in the next chapter, we'll analyze a real and massive case of someone who already understands this and is masterfully repositioning the global chessboard: China. The New Era of China. Part 1. Economic Transformation. For much of the 20th century, China was seen as a poor, closed, and underdeveloped nation. But in just a few decades, it transformed from a rural, war-torn country into one of the most influential powers on the planet. This transformation wasn't accidental. It was built on strategy, discipline, and long-term vision. The turning point came in 1978, when Deng Xiaoping took power and launched a series of radical economic reforms. He understood that the traditional communist model wasn't working, and instead of destroying it completely, he adapted. He created special economic zones, encouraged foreign investment, and allowed private ownership under state control. With that, he transformed a closed economy into a global manufacturing platform. Cities like Shenzhen, once agricultural villages, became industrial and technological hubs. Millions escaped poverty at record speed. Mass production, low costs, and a focus on infrastructure made China the world's factory. But the country didn't stop there. In recent decades, its strategy evolved, shifting from focusing on volume to focusing on added value. China began investing heavily in technical education, science, technology, and innovation. Today, companies like Huawei, BYD, and Alibaba aren't just manufacturing giants. They're global leaders in strategic sectors like telecommunications, electric vehicles, and artificial intelligence. Additionally, centralized planning enabled China to build in 20 years what many nations haven't in 100. The largest high-speed rail network, entire cities built for the future, and a self-sufficient industrial ecosystem. And most impressive of all, over US tried to block China's access to advanced components. So what did China do? It doubled down on domestic investment, launched tech self-sufficiency plans, and is now building its own supply chain, with billions in government incentives. The same is happening with artificial intelligence. China is leveraging AI not only for commercial innovation, but also for security, logistics, large-scale data analysis, and social control. The methods may be questioned, but the efficiency is undeniable. And this technological edge has implications far beyond the economy. It redefines how power is exercised in the 21st century. In the automotive industry, China is also accelerating its dominance. BYD, for example, has already surpassed Tesla in electric vehicle sales in several markets. And the lead isn't just in volume, but in quality, embedded technology, and energy innovation. Another critical factor is that the Chinese state is actively involved in all of this. Unlike the Western model, where companies operate independently, in China the government defines the macro plan, and companies execute it with precision. This allows for massive investments in infrastructure, logistics, and energy, even in areas that appear unprofitable in the short term. Also, the construction of the world's most advanced high-speed rail network, connecting major urban centers at record speeds, shows how the country thinks in decades and acts swiftly. This level of planning is shaping a new balance of power, because it's no longer just about selling cheap products, it's about leading the next revolutions in energy, transportation, communication, and information technology. With a solid infrastructure and growing technological dominance, China is now ready for something even greater: to redefine the global leadership role, including in the financial sector. And that's exactly what we'll explore in the next chapter: how China's economic and commercial dominance is beginning to shake the old world order built around the dollar and Western financial centers. The reorganization of global power. For over a century, the United States was the center of the global economy. The dollar, the New York Stock Exchange, and the Western banking system all formed the backbone of international finance. But this structure is now being challenged, quietly but irreversibly. China is already the top trading partner for more than 120 countries, while the US holds that position in less than half as many. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing is establishing economic ties with nations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, offering infrastructure in exchange for long-term alliances. And with this expansion comes something even more ambitious: the effort to internationalize the yuan, its national currency. More and more trade agreements are being made without using the dollar. Countries like Russia, Iran, and even some in South America and the Middle East are now transacting with China in local currencies. If this trend continues, and all signs point to it, the dollar's hegemony could weaken. Why does this matter? Because the dominance of the dollar is one of America's greatest strategic advantages. It allows the US to print money to fund deficits, exert power through sanctions, and control global financial flows. If that power begins to fade, the post-war world order, built on institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, and Western-led trade alliances, will have to be redefined. The new landscape points toward a multipolar world, where multiple powers share influence, set rules, and compete for space, economically, politically, and technologically. This reorganization won't be peaceful. It involves rivalries, cultural clashes, differing economic models, and opposing interests. But one thing is certain: the world no longer revolves around a single superpower. And understanding this new configuration is essential for any investor or citizen who wants to position themselves wisely for the coming decade. In the next chapter, we'll explore which sectors and markets are emerging as the new frontiers of growth, and where the greatest opportunities may be hidden while the world shifts on its axis. The new frontiers of investment. With the world rapidly transforming, the biggest mistake an investor can make is to focus only on where the money has been, and not on where it's going. The new frontiers of growth are no longer solely in traditional markets like the US and Europe. They're in places that, until recently, were seen as secondary. Emerging markets such as China, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, and various African nations are gaining prominence, and not by chance. These economies share three powerful characteristics. 1. Young and growing populations. 2. Accelerated digital adoption. 3. Infrastructure still under development, which allows for real expansion. While the West deals with stagnation and aging populations, these regions are forming new middle classes, increasing internal consumption, and integrating rapidly into global trade. But smart investing goes beyond geography. It also focuses on future-oriented sectors. The technological revolution is in full swing, and the most promising sectors for the coming years include artificial intelligence, which is redefining everything from automation to healthcare, biotechnology, especially in longevity, genetics, and future food production, renewable energy, with emphasis on solar, wind, and energy storage solution, quantum computing, which may completely reshape how we process data, electric and autonomous mobility, as companies build new transportation ecosystems. Another key area is the rise of alternative financial systems, like cryptocurrencies and DeFi, decentralized finance. After the 2008 crisis, growing distrust in traditional banking gave birth to new ways of transferring value, protecting capital, and generating income. Today, major institutions are entering the space. Funds, banks, and even governments are studying or testing their own digital currency. This shows that the movement is no longer fringe. It's becoming structural. But it's still early, which means there's a rare window of opportunity for those seeking exponential returns with calculated risk and proper education. And here's a golden rule. The best returns are found in sectors still underestimated by the majority. By the time something becomes obvious, the profits have already been claimed by those who got there first. That's why the secret isn't to follow what everyone is doing. It's to understand where the world is going and position yourself before the crowd arrives. Thing that separates those who build wealth from those who live in scarcity. It's not luck. It's not the paycheck. Not even technical knowledge. It's the mindset behind how each person sees money, effort, and time. The truth is, financial success is not an event. It's a process. A process fueled by small, consistent decisions that compound over time. And here's the hard truth. Most people want the result, but don't want to pay the price. They want freedom, but avoid discipline. They want passive income, but never build assets. They want stability, but live on the edge of their credit limit. That's the pattern of financial mediocrity. Immediate comfort, quick rewards, perfect excuses. Those who thrive, on the other hand, choose short-term discomfort to gain long-term freedom. They wake up earlier, study more, invest before it feels safe, cut excesses, say no when everyone says yes. They don't seek approval, they seek consistency. And maybe most importantly, they take full responsibility. They don't blame the government, the economy, their boss, or their childhood. They look in the mirror and say, "My financial life is a reflection of the choices I've made. And if I want a new result, I need to make new choices." That's the turning point. Because while many wait for external change, the winners create an internal transformation. They understand that in times of crisis, the biggest advantage is being prepared. And no strategy works if your mindset is sabotaging your own progress. In the next chapter, we'll translate this mindset into practical motivation, so you don't just know what to do, but actually feel the real drive to start today. You've made it this far with a major advantage over most: awareness. Awareness of risks, opportunities, historical cycles, and, most importantly, of your responsibility for what comes next. But knowledge alone changes nothing. It's action that transforms. It's discipline that builds. It's the courage to apply, every day, what you already know must be done, even when it's not easy. Every day you delay a financial decision is a day where compound interest works against you. Every dollar you spend on autopilot is one less brick in your future freedom. Every excuse you repeat is an invisible trap that keeps you exactly where you are. So the reflection that remains is simple. What can I do today that will put me in a better position 6 months from now? Maybe it's paying off a debt, or starting that emergency fund. Maybe it's opening an investment account, studying a new sector, or talking to someone who's already where you want to be. The size of the step doesn't matter. What matters is that you take one. Life doesn't change through massive decisions. It changes through consistency, through micro-victories accumulated over time, through the quiet determination to keep going, even when no one's watching. And remember, you don't need to have everything figured out to start. You just need to start. In the next chapter, you'll have the opportunity to turn all this into real action with clarity, purpose, and a simple plan. Because more important than being informed is being committed to the life you want to live. If you've made it this far, you're already ahead of 99% of people. But now comes the most important part. Commitment. Not to this video, not to a passing idea, but to yourself. Because every transformation starts with a decision, and it grows stronger when that decision is declared. So here's the challenge. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to take action." It might seem like a simple sentence, but it marks a turning point. It's the moment you stop being just a spectator and become the protagonist of your own financial journey. And more than that, when you write it, you create a public anchor. That increases your chances of actually taking action. Because when you declare your intent out loud, even digitally, your mind understands that it's serious, that it's real, that it's happening now. And I'll be there, reading every comment, liking, supporting, acknowledging every person who decides to commit to their own growth. This is the first step. Small? Yes. But that's how every journey begins. In the next and final chapter, we'll end with a message to remind you of something essential. The future isn't written, but it will be defined by the decisions you make today. The world is changing, fast. Old systems are falling, new leaders are rising. The global economy is being redesigned before our eyes. And in the midst of all this, you have a choice. You can keep waiting for the right moment, for stability, for a certainty that will never come. Or you can accept the most powerful truth of all. The right moment is now. It doesn't matter if you have a little or a lot, if you're starting from scratch or rebuilding. What matters is the decision to stop being a spectator, to take the reins, to build, to become someone unshakable, even in times of chaos. Most people will keep repeating the same patterns, ignoring the signs, blaming the system, waiting for something out there to change. But you can choose differently. You can look back 5 or 10 years from now and say, "That day, I chose to move. I chose to invest. I chose to grow." Because the truth is simple. The greatest opportunities appear in the middle of fear, and the greatest results come to those who have the courage to plant, even when the ground feels unstable. You already have what you need: understanding, clarity, desire. Now, turn that into action. Build your strategy, adjust your mindset, and move forward. Because financial freedom is not a destination, it's a journey. And that journey begins with a decision. The decision you make today.